This is Gary Hine, entomologist at the Panhandle Research and Extension Center. Rangeland grasshopper management can always be problematic. Oftentimes aerial applications can be utilized using the RAATs program, but many times just for local populations, sometimes we want to treat much smaller areas than would be effective or practical utilizing aerial treatments. This is when the ATV-RAATs Control Strategy program can be very important, and we'll talk about this program now. As with the aerial RAATs program, the ATV-RAATs strategy does take advantage of grasshopper movement to use swath spraying. So we're talking about treating alternate swaths with this process as well. Again, taking advantage of the grasshopper movement, we treat a particular swath, leaving an area untreated. And with the ATV-RAATs program, we actually can leave a larger, wider swaths present of the untreated areas. And the reason is that we're not treating as wide an area. And as I indicated, grasshopper movement runs about 10 feet per day. So as we treat these narrower swaths, it doesn't take as many days for those grasshoppers to move from the treated swaths or from the untreated swaths into the treated swaths. As shown by the diagram, the red arrows indicate that grasshoppers will be moving around within those untreated swaths and eventually will find their way into those treated swaths where they will feed on grass that's been treated and will have a lethal dose of residual insecticide. A couple recommendations again from the University of Wyoming data indicate that Dimilin at a 1 ounce per acre applied rate or 7 XLR at a 16 ounce per acre rate, again pH buffered, can be utilized, and we can go with about 33% coverage. In other words, 1 pass of treated material and 2 passes of untreated before we treat again to allow for about 33% coverage, 67% untreated area between the treated strips. It's important to realize that for higher grasshopper infestations that we might have to up the coverage of the treatment in these situations. The rule of thumb is that the percentage of coverage should be equal to about the grasshopper density, up to about 50%. So if you have more than 33 grasshoppers per square yard, you might want to utilize more coverage than the 33% we just talked about. If you have very dense populations, 40 to 50 per square yard, you might want to reduce that coverage down so you're treating alternate swaths and covering 50% of the area. For lower population densities under 33 grasshoppers per square yard, the 1 treated, 2 untreated swath widths probably would be a good utilization of the strategy. Again, as with the aerial program, the use of canola oil will increase the control by increasing the attractiveness of the treated areas to the grasshoppers. If you're utilizing canola oil, you want to make sure you use enough crop oil concentrate to be able to emulsify that oil. The rule of thumb there is to use 1 part crop oil concentrate to 3 parts canola oil to allow this to occur. Research from the University of Wyoming has indicated that after 3 weeks utilizing this ATV-RAATs program with Dimilin 2L, we can get about 80 to 90% mortality, and with the 7XLR program, we can get about 75% mortality. These levels of mortality, while not being extreme, are certainly good enough to allow for a reduction of populations of grasshoppers down below economic thresholds in almost all situations. Just a few examples of boom or nozzles that can be used on ATVs. We want to try to avoid the use of a boom sprayer because as you bounce and move through rangeland, oftentimes it's fairly bouncy, and boom sprayers really will provide a very poor level of application because they will be moving around, bouncing so much. If we use a Boom Buster Model 140 nozzle, basically it's just a single nozzle that will spray out in one direction, perhaps getting a 16-foot swath width. These are often used for herbicide applications in road ditches and other types of areas. These nozzles can be run at about 4.8 gallons per acre at 40 psi and can be run up to about 15 miles per hour. So again, a fairly useful boom type or nozzle type for this type of application. Another nozzle option would be the FieldJet 1/4 KLC5 nozzle. This nozzle has a lower output rate than the boomless nozzle we talked about earlier. So you can increase the coverage per tank, and you can also increase the swath width because it does spray out in both directions. You can get to a swath width of about 17 to 21 feet. In summary for the ATV-RAATs program, first of all, treatment timing is critical, as with all RAATs programs. Timing early when we start seeing the fourth instars being present. Secondly, the use of a 33% coverage unless we have very high densities of grasshoppers will be important. This will limit the cost and also increase the amount of acres that you can treat with a small ATV sprayer. Coverages greater than 50% really are very seldom necessary under these situations. An oil adjuvant does increase the efficacy of these products, and because of the attractiveness of that oil to the grasshoppers. And the spray equipment and the spray characteristics are important factors. We want to try to maximize our effectiveness of application, and the more uniform and effective application you can get out, the longer residual you will have and the better effectiveness you will have from the treatments that you're putting out in this RAATs program.